this is a perfect time, perfect audience to have this conversation. That clip that we just showed has echoed across boardrooms, across groups like this. I think people are coming to the realization that we have two different systems of AI developing, one in the West and one that's centered in China. Can you explain where we are in this arms race? So help frame, what is an AI arms race? Where are we? What does it mean to businesses here in the U.S.?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. I agree with Kissinger. It is much more complex than the nuclear arms race, and different. But for example, when I was talking about chips, chips are tiny, right? They're very hard to track, easy to have transshipment. You send some to Saudi Arabia or someplace in the Middle East, and suddenly they find themselves in China. It's a different game than nuclear weapons. Then there were two superpowers, kind of hard to hide a nuclear power plant or nuclear facility. So it's more complicated. The other thing is AI is business, every business, right? What's an AI business? A hospital, a manufacturing company, KPMG, everyone's going to use AI. So it makes it much more complicated. Here's how I think about it. There is an arms race in the following respect. China wants the world to run on Chinese AI. Huawei, SMIC, DeepSeek, Huawei chips. And they want to use AI and their technology as a way to bring countries closer to them. The US should want that also. That's about our economic prosperity, but also our national security. So I think of it, there's a few things. Number one, we always want to be ahead of the Chinese, like in the nuclear arms race, right? We want to be stronger, which means we have to innovate faster. We want to have bigger models, faster models, better chips, et cetera. Always want to be ahead relative to China and absolutely to China. We want to make sure that no countries are getting if we are ahead, we want to make sure, make no mistake about it, China wants to be ahead because AI is applied to nuclear weapons, AI is applied to bioterrorism, AI is applied to the military, makes them stronger, so we can't let that happen. But the thing that I think is just as important, which most people don't think about, is what I was saying. Like Huawei, for example, in telecommunications. I don't know where you guys practice, it's a global firm, but all of Africa, all of Central America, all of South America, all runs telecom is Huawei. And that accrues to China's strength. So what I'd say when I was in office was, the reason it makes it so hard is we have to protect our most leading edge stuff, but we also want to diffuse our technology. Because we want Europe, Africa, Mexico, Southeast Asia, running on US AI, India, running on US AI models, US AI data centers, US AI chips, because that brings the world closer to us, and that's a tricky balance.
Where are we?
And we lost it in telecom, by the way.
We lost what?
We lost it in what are you, there's somebody here from Verizon. If you go all over the world, all over Southeast Asia, the Indo-Pacific, there's not a lot of US or European telecommunications equipment, right? There just isn't. It doesn't exist. It's pretty much all Chinese because it's cheaper and just as good. So what do you think that means? It means those countries are just a little bit closer to China. And the balance, that's bad for America, right? Geopolitics, we need a balance of power. We need to draw these countries closer to us. And so we ought to use our technology to help them make their industries better and more AI enabled, because then they'll want to be closer to America.
Where are we today? How would you position the winners and losers in the AI arms race today? Is the U.S. ahead?
Yes.
And what has to happen?
Like barely.
Just barely. What has to happen for U.S.? Is it restricting chips? Is it
so hard?
What are the factors?
So what I was saying there on that clip, in the first Trump administration, they correctly started to get very focused on Huawei and SMIC and other Chinese champions. But what they did was they would add Chinese companies, YMTC, to what's called the entity list, the blacklist. Made it hard to sell things to those individual companies. But China, what do you think China does? Okay, if I can't sell to Huawei, guess what? And 3 weeks later, there's XYZ company across the street from Huawei with all Huawei employees, now called Huawei. So then you have to put that company on the entity list. I said, it's a fool's errand. I said, it's like whack-a-mole. And it was. I was quoted in the front page of the Wall Street Journal saying it was a fool's errand. Some people didn't like my view. You may not agree with me, but I'm telling you, I lived it. It's impossible to keep up. So what I said was, instead, what I think we should do is figure out what are the key choke point technologies. Like one area where the US and Europe is way ahead of China is in the semiconductor equipment, the EUV equipment. So instead of saying, and the most sophisticated equipment, or even the software actually, and the most sophisticated chips, the US is ahead and Europe is ahead. So instead of saying, okay, just Huawei, you can't have this, we say we're not going to sell any EUV equipment to China, period. Now, some people said, that's too radical, that's decoupling. I don't think it is. I think we have an $800 billion trading relationship with China. I think that's a good thing. I am opposed to decoupling. I am opposed to trading. I'm for trading with China. But what I do think is we have to say, what are these critical choke points that allow us to stay ahead, however incrementally, and deny the whole country of China, and by the way, China's allies. I mean, it doesn't really help to sell it to Malaysia. The minute you sell a piece of EUV to Malaysia, it's in China. So it's actually, I used to say, and like I was criticized a lot for what I did, and I'd be like, oh, it's easy from the cheap seats. This is tough stuff. How do you decide which equipment, which countries, updating it? It's a complicated analysis.
You mentioned the trading relationship is massive. It is almost $1 trillion trading relationship with China. How do you restrict this? What's their retaliation to the restriction? And how do you balance this diplomacy without harming the interest of American business?
So here's the thing. China is very good at nuance. The United States political system, or the US, we're not good at nuance, which is unfortunate because this requires a constant diplomacy, constant nuance and trading. And so that's what it requires. More engagement, more talking, more commercial ties. But in America now, there's a couple things in America that are still bipartisan. And one of them is being tough on China. And I think it's important to be tough on China. How you balance it is you say, there is a very narrow group of products necessary for our national security. These are products where we're ahead. China can't buy them from another country, and we're going to deny this to China because we don't want them to have a military advantage. It could be narrow. But on top of that, I think you need to show up in China. I was the first Commerce Secretary in 7 years to go to China. And I was criticized. A lot of Republicans on Capitol Hill had to go testify. Why am I weak on China by showing up in China? I was the only cabinet secretary in President Biden's term to go not just to Beijing, but I went to Shanghai. I actually went to the Disney park in Shanghai. I called Bob Iger ahead of time. I said, hey, I think this is good. Will you host me? Blah, blah, blah. Widely criticized that I did that. You're soft on China. You tell me how an amusement park hurts our national security. It doesn't. It's ridiculous. What's my point? If you go to China right now, there's no American tourists, very few American tourists, very few, businesses are retrenching. I was with Bob, the other guy that runs Disney, the other day. Sales are down in Shanghai Park. I think that's bad for America. I think you need to show up in China. No students. There's the Schwarzman campus of NYU in Shanghai. Almost no American students there. So I think that will lead to escalation with China. And so I think the way to do it is, I'm not stupid. I would say this to the Republicans. I understand China is our greatest threat. I understand they're our greatest strategic competitor. No kidding. But decoupling totally will lead to escalation, which I think is dangerous. So my thing is, trade where you can. Don't trade where you can't, but communicate constantly. And I'll tell you now, there's a dangerous level of, in my view, dangerous level of lack of communication and lack of back channel, which I think can only lead to escalation, risk of miscalculation. But it's hard.
If there's two paths that we could take, what are the decisions that are being made right now, and how there was Trump announced a AI policy that was announced, I guess, last week. What does that do to the relationship, and how does that what kind of a trajectory does that put us on?
I thought it was good policy, his set of executive orders. I thought they were, I think they were really largely very good. I know, having written a few executive orders for my old boss, you can write an executive order, that's pretty easy. The hard stuff is implementing it. So we'll see if they implement it. But at least on paper, I thought it was directionally all good stuff. I think, the Chinese respect power, the Chinese respect strength, and the Chinese respect straight talk. So these are the facts. We want to beat them. We want to be ahead. We want to protect the economic and national security interests of our country, period. We want Europe, we want the rest of the world. We want as many companies in the world using American AI technologies and chips, period. So it's game on, let's go compete. And I think that's, the way you have to think about it. I do think this. We will not win without allies. China is too big. China is too big, and they are very close to all the countries in Southeast Asia. Xi Jinping's first visit every year of his presidency is to Africa. The United States has been largely absent from Africa. You go all over Africa, it all runs on Huawei, all the ports. I was just in Nairobi the other day. Those of you who've been in Kenya, you get off and it's a beautiful new highway, toll road, all built by the Chinese. So the thing is, we have to be strong in America. We have to continue to innovate and out-innovate, but we do have to pick up our game and get allies around the world, because China's not sleeping in that respect.
What's encouraging is it doesn't sound like you believe that we're pushing ourselves down the wrong path with policy. Did I read that right?
Yeah, yes, but no. I thought, like I say, my own view, one woman's view, I thought the AI executive orders were good. I think the chaotic nature with which we're pursuing this tariff policy isn't really creating a lot of goodwill with other countries. You can't compete with China without Europe, Japan, Southeast Asia, et cetera. So I worry about that. I worry about our losing trust in the world, our losing credibility in the world. We need allies. And I don't think it's a sign of weakness. And I worry a ton about where we are politically. The fact that I went to China And that caused me to have to endure a lot of grief from Congress people saying that I was soft on China. The fact that I had a lot of meetings with CEOs. I was a commerce secretary. I thought it was my job to meet with CEOs. Many Democratic senators would send me letters. Why are you spending so much time with CEOs? So, that's not good. None of that is the right direction. But I like where we are in AI. I love it that we have the best, biggest, best hyperscalers in the world. We have the best chips in the world. And the only thing I would say is we have to keep the pedal to the metal.
I think framing the importance of the AI race, let's fast forward 3 or 5 years ahead. What happens if the U.S. falls behind and China begins to dominate at the same time as AI becomes much more powerful than it is today? I think a lot of people look at AI and they're like, what are they going to do? They're going to write better essays or create better art?
It's way bigger than that.
What does this mean?
Yeah, well, again, you guys would know more than I, but I think, I could talk all day about this, but I think CEOs, companies, industries that are slow to integrate AI will fall behind, lose, and maybe go out of business. And so that's, I think, a fact. Europe, I don't want to upset any Europeans in the crowd, but as a cautionary tale, Europe did fall behind in technology. A decade ago, US, Europe had roughly the same GDP. Now we're twice as big. They don't really have tech champions. Now someone's going to say SaaS and someone's going to say Spotify, but seriously. It's just, the reality is we have a much more innovative, dynamic, higher wage, higher growth economy. And a lot of that is because we did out-innovate. We could talk all day. Why did Europe fall behind? Some would say they over-regulated. I happen to be one of those people who thinks that. Their labor practices made it very difficult. Capital markets are weak there. But what's my point? My point is that could be us. I don't want to be Europe. Right. Like you say, 3 years from now, we don't want to be Europe as it relates to AI, and China is America.
Right.
It's not a good place to be. I spent a lot of time with world leaders all over the world. I spent a lot of time with Prime Minister Modi, a lot of time with the presidents of Latin American countries, Asian countries, the UAE, Saudi Arabia. These countries, like everyone, they want to move ahead. Yeah, they look at AI and they see jobs, prosperity, economic growth. If the U.S. says to them, we're not going to deny, we're not going to work with you, they're not going to say, okay, no problem, we're going to sit back. They're going to go to China. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot at stake to falling behind. Our own GDP dynamism and growth, but also our standing in the world, because if you're the best, other people want to be with you.
So if AI is being used to, as Kissinger writes in his last book, to, weaponize, thought and shape opinion.
Yeah, which it is.
And kind of turn the will of the people in the direction of the, political direction.
Yeah.
In a free world, how do you combat that? Besides banning TikTok.
Which I support. Just so you know, in the U.S. Maybe for reasons different than you think. It's definitely true, in my judgment, based on everything I know, much of which I'm not permitted to share with you. China used TikTok as a propaganda instrument, uses it every day as a propaganda instrument in the United States. In my view, there's no doubt about that. That isn't why I think it should be banned. However, I think it should be banned because of the security reasons. More than half of U.S. military members have TikTok on their, personal phone. That means the Chinese military knows the GPS location of every one of them at every time. It means they know what they're looking at on their phone. It creates huge opportunities for blackmail and espionage. So that's why I have favored either massively regulating TikTok in the U.S. or really, having it be U.S. ownership. Sorry, you said TikTok, and I went down that path. Say your question again.
How do...
Oh, propaganda. It needs to be regulated. This is a big deal. So let me say, I think you can't put your foot off the gas of AI. I have also said trying to hold back China is a fool's errand. It's like a running race. It's a running race. You can tug on your opponent's shirt, or that's just not a sustainable way to keep winning. A way to keep winning is training harder and running faster. And so that's how we win. We have to out-innovate. That being said, I worry a lot about American democracy being eroded or destroyed because of AI, getting into people's minds. That's like you thought fake news was bad. AI is fake news times a million. So it has to be regulated somehow, I think, which is not slowing down innovation. It's regulating the way AI is used in the public space. The other thing I'm literally losing sleep about is the job loss because of AI. I mean, you had a slide, and I've heard, creating $1 billion company with 5 employees. Just because you can do that, should you do that? Where are we going with this? 10% unemployment rate in this country? Universal basic income? I think that's the end of America. Personally, I'm opposed. The American dream, there's no America without the American dream. You have to feel like you can work hard, get ahead, and make a living. So am I saying slow down AI? No. But we have to get somebody, this really isn't necessarily your job, but somebody has to figure out if all these companies are implementing AI and or humanoid robotics, what are Americans going to do? Now, I think there will be new jobs. Like 10 years ago, there were no cloud engineers, and now there's thousands of them. But I'll tell you, our educational system in this country stinks in terms of lifelong learning and rapidly training people. So I think we're just going to have to say we need whole new big public-private partnerships around retraining people. Because I'm all for moving fast on AI, but I worry about the propaganda in elections, and I worry about the job loss.
Let's talk a little bit about...
Also, the other thing is, I hope we get to a place where we work with China on certain regulations. Kissinger, you talked about the Cold War. I'm going to tell you 2 things. Number one, you may not know this, but in the depths of the Cold War, the United States had more back channel with Russia than we do now with China. That should alarm you. But because there's this anti-China, be tough on China euphoria in both parties, everyone's afraid to talk. In the depths of the Cold War, we had back channel between our government and their government to avoid miscalculation and unintended escalation. We need that. And we also worked with them. I mean, there were fault lines. We did not have a nuclear war. So whether it's extinction of jobs because of AI, or brainwashing of people because of AI, or climate change, China and America have similar interests. It's not in China's interest for chips and these models to get in the hands of a non-state terrorist actor. Same with us. So I also hope we get to a place where we can work with them to avoid the worst outcomes. It's in our interest and their interest.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about safety. You launched the International Network of AI Safety Institutes. How is that developing? Is this the launch? Is this something that countries are taking seriously, and are we working together that way?
I'm smiling because a lot of the work that happened in the last administration is being undone now. Not bad. They've changed the name of the AI Safety Institute. Who cares? They're basically doing the same things. So I would say, yeah, I'm quite pleased with it. Because again, we can't do it alone. You know, we have to have some kind of, the Safety Institute wasn't really around job losses. It was more around what I said before, chips and models getting into the hands of bad guys. So we got to work together with countries around the world, and it is still happening.
You know, I mentioned this in my opening, but over the last 6 or 8 months, I've seen a growing level of concern and alarm bells being set off around our ability to provide enough energy.
Yes.
Not just, you know, AI is consuming a huge amount, but also electric cars and manufacturing that's coming back to the U.S. If I just, and I showed a chart that has the delta between the projected supply and the projected demand.
Yeah.
How do we begin to approach that problem?
We need innovation. I mean, someone on the clip said natural gas, which I agree with, but I mean, fusion's been around the corner for a long time. Hopefully it really is around the corner. You know, we need energy factories. We just need a lot more innovation, otherwise I think we're screwed. Sorry. I mean, it's just such an amount of consumption that we need. And there is a lot of innovation. I mean, these data centers are working on balancing their load. There's a lot more sophistication around load balancing, a lot more sophistication around, you know, on the hottest day in Arizona in the summer, when all the air conditionings are on, throw the load to someplace else, or only do the most time-sensitive calculations. So I think it's going to be a lot of innovation around titrating demand, new forms of electricity, and I think there's no other way around. You know, there's no other way around it. And regulation. I mean, there was a comment in your clip that it takes, I don't know, years to permit a new facility, connect it to the grid. It's true.
Yeah.
By the way, not in China.